You're listening to an African Elements top news story for July 23, 2025. Please visit our website at africanelements.org for more daily news. The International Court of Justice, ICJ, issued an advisory opinion declaring climate change an existential threat to humanity. ICJ President Yuji Iwasawa emphasized that this case is a concern of planetary proportions that imperils all forms of life. The court views climate change as a fundamental threat to existence, meaning it endangers life, societies, or ecosystems. The ruling confirms that countries have legal duties to act on climate change, rooted in international law, human rights law, and environmental protection responsibilities. This opinion ends the era of countries deciding their climate policies freely and introduces accountability for excessive emissions and past failures. The ICJ asserted that states' responsibilities extend beyond existing United Nations climate agreements. Failing to meet these duties could be considered an internationally wrongful act. High-emitting countries like the United States and China argued that international accords should determine obligations. The ICJ ruled that states must protect the climate beyond their commitments under UN agreements. International laws require states to reduce emissions, prevent harm, and collaborate to protect vulnerable populations. Even if a country meets its Paris Agreement targets, it could still be held accountable under broader international law for significant climate harm. The ICJ outlined specific obligations for states under various international laws and treaties, including climate conventions and humanitarian law. The court considered the entire body of international law, including the UN Charter and climate change treaties. States must adopt measures to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to climate change under the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. Parties to the Paris Agreement must act with due diligence to achieve the 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature goal. They must prepare and maintain nationally determined contributions, NDCs, which outline efforts to reduce emissions and adapt to climate impacts. The ICJ's ruling implies that states' climate obligations extend beyond voluntary contributions to include broader duties under international law. Customary international law imposes obligations on states to protect the climate system from greenhouse gas emissions. States have a duty to prevent significant environmental harm and cooperate in good faith. International human rights law also obligates states to protect the climate system and the environment. The ICJ's ruling has profound implications for climate litigation, providing a legal foundation for vulnerable nations to seek compensation from high-emitting countries. This development is significant for marginalized communities, particularly those in the African diaspora, who suffer the most from climate change impacts. Vishal Prasad, director of Pacific Islands Students Fighting Climate Change, stated that governments must acknowledge their legal responsibilities. Climate-related litigation has intensified, with nearly 3,000 cases filed across almost 60 countries. The ICJ's opinion will likely fuel more cases, providing a legal precedent for justice seekers. An internationally wrongful act refers to a state breaching an international obligation. If a state fails to protect the climate, such inaction could be a violation of international law, leading to state responsibility. This opens avenues for legal claims against states for climate-related damages. ICJ advisory opinions carry significant legal weight and can influence international law development and national courts. The opinion provides a basis for future climate litigation and can be used by civil society and vulnerable nations to hold governments accountable. ICJ President Yuji Iwasawa expressed hope that the opinion will guide action to solve the climate crisis. If states are found responsible for internationally wrongful acts, potential legal consequences could include obligations to cease harmful actions and offer reparations. Reparations can include restitution and compensation for damages. The ICJ's opinion states that states must cut emissions and compensate vulnerable nations for harm caused. The ruling is significant for vulnerable populations, including many in the African diaspora, who face environmental racism and have fewer resources to adapt. The ruling emphasizes obligations to protect vulnerable populations under international human rights law. It implicitly includes those most susceptible to climate impacts due to geographic location or economic disadvantage. Copyright African Elements.